Well, hello, donkeys. It is, let's see, Wednesday, March 28th, 2018, and this is the Promotional Malpractice Live Chat here on MMAfighting.com. Welcome to this program. You guys know me. Thank you so much for watching. We will, that is not good. We'll see how that goes. We will go for about, let's see, 88 minutes or so today. Talking about, let's see, Rousey versus the media, which is always a fun topic for me. How about, let's see, what else will we get into? We'll talk about some of the growth in regional MMA. I thought it was actually pretty good regional MMA last weekend. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about some of the welterweight fights that have been announced and a whole lot more. Best place to get your questions in are going to be on MMA Fighting, where I can't reach it anymore, where this window is embedded. And comments that turn green get priority but not exclusivity. So as you can see, a little bit different today. I'm going to try a bunch of different setups. I'm here in my studio that I've set up. When there's 1,000 different ways in which the room is arranged. This is another one. I'm actually standing today. I'm at the standing desk that I have, right? It can go down, right? It can go up, right? So I figured if I stand, I would be a little bit more engaged, right? Topical, loud, even. Try the day. Notes. Besides this, some other ones. Oh, here's a big one that I've been dying to tell you, donkeys. So I had Cynthia Calvillo on my radio show, and I actually asked her about the debate we were having about how to pronounce her name. I am delighted to tell you that she told me she has no problems pronouncing it that way because, as I explained to you, although some of you are just resistant to this idea, that in the history of the language, no Spanish speaker has ever corrected the accent of another Spanish speaker because that's just not what they do. It's never happened. And so, yes, she pronounces it Calvillo, and that's fine. But she said she understood where I was coming from and had no problems with it. So, que pena, pobrecitos, pero es la verdad. Yes? Yes. No more crying, no more debate. It's over. I was right. I'll accept your apologies. LukeThomasNews@gmail.com. Okay? So the next time you want to debate something like this, do what I do, which is called homework. All right. So I'm glad that debate is settled, which it is. Okay. On inside and right these debates. Had to go to the hospital over the weekend. We'll see what happens with that. Last night, my jaw dislocated in my sleep because I guess I'm so stressed out, I'm clenching it. And what else? Oh, yeah, I think my lungs are filling with fluid. So it's going great. It's going really great for me. All right. Let's take a look at some of these things here. Now, let's see what the first question is because I want to get right to... right. Okay. So let's do this. Let's get right to this Ronda Rousey stuff, if I may. I don't know how far it is down. I didn't have a chance to look at the feed, but I would like to start there if we can. Okay. So if you didn't see, although I'm sure many of you did, Ronda Rousey went on the ESPN car wash tour. I think, I'm not sure if she went on all of them, but she at least went on Wingo and Golic's terrible podcast or show. And then she went on First Take and then spoke with Max Kellerman, at least in the clip that made the rounds. A couple of points to note. Number one, if you watch the full interviews, they're not that bad, right? It deserves to be noted that if you actually watch the full breadth of what had happened, that were those clips where she has this awkward exchange, were they representative of the larger interview? Not necessarily. However, when the interview's over, the first thing you're thinking of is, oh my God, did you see how she reacted? I mean, this is patently insane, right? So the most memorable parts of those interviews were the ones where she had this inability to basically deal with really basic questions. I don't know how else you're supposed to describe this. And there's a debate that's rising up about what was the best way to handle that, who's at fault. Let me just say this. If you're a media member and you are taking Ronda's side, at least insofar as talking to people is concerned in the job, because the job in media involves many things. You could be a writer, you could be a reporter, you could be a sideline reporter, you could be like an investigative reporter, you can be an editor. There's lots of different roles to fill. But if you watch what happened yesterday on ESPN and your response is, well, the media got that one wrong, you don't have the constitution to do that portion of the job correctly. It's not for you. It's not, and that's fine. Not everything is. That's okay. In fact, frankly, I'm not sure that I like that portion of the job either, or that I'm best situated for it. I would never. In fact, I'm damn sure of it. I'm not situated for it. I could probably get by doing it, but it's not really where I excel. But I'm talking about people where you're looking at this and you're trying to figure out who went wrong here, and there is some measure of accountability that the media has to have in this case and in every case. But let's just be absolutely clear about this. That's on her. Borderline 100%. Not quite, but pretty close. If you watched that yesterday and you're in the media and you're like, man, the media really jacked this one up, that kind of job is not for you because you can't do it right. You're not built to do it right. Your sensibilities just don't lead you in the right direction about this one. Let's be totally clear about this. Did you think that on March 28th, about her MMA losses? Dude, when she signed on to WWE, I was like Bocelli, Conte Partiro, time to say goodbye. I was done. I had no intention of talking about her ever again. And not in any kind of hateful way, just because she's on to a portion of life that I don't have a lot of interest in. And as I mentioned on the chat, last week or the week before, she's tried to go be happy. Bye. No problem with that. No problem with that. Here's how this works. If you agree to do an interview, then you agree to have them ask you whatever they want. Whatever they want. Now, they probably won't ask you whatever they want. They won't ask you something totally inappropriate about your sex life or something. And if they do, there'll be repercussions for it. But we're talking about in the bounds of normal questioning. And Mike Golic fumbled his question, and Max Kellerman kind of hemmed and hawed a little bit, but neither of them were inappropriate. Neither of them were beyond the pale. Both of them were well within the allowable spectrum of media questioning. Fact. That you could not find an editor worth his weight in salt who would say anything other than that. Period. Not possible. Not possible. We are talking about totally innocuous questions. And if you saw that and your response was, man, the media really could have done a better job. Well, yeah, better job, sure. But the media got it wrong. You're not built for this. You just can't do this job effectively. I don't know how else to tell you. The notion that she should be allowed to go on there and be asked questions that are pleasing to her is absurd. And the only reason why you're saying that, if many of you are not, of course, but the ones who are, only reason you're saying that is because you view her as a sympathetic figure, which I do too. But I'm sorry, I'm telling you, you do not want media that only asks questions of the subjects that are pleasing to the subjects. Because if that's what you want, go watch Ronda's interview with, what's his face, Jerry O'Connell and Kelly Ripa. That's what you'll get. Questions about Mexican Corona weddings. That is what it sounds like when someone is just carrying water and doing PR for them. You don't want somebody being badgered. You tell me now, like Bill O'Reilly interviewing some, intersectional feminist or something on live TV, where he'd just be like, screaming at her. You wouldn't want that either. That would clearly be beyond the pale. At that point, it becomes its own version of pro wrestling, quite honestly. That's also out of bounds. But hey, can we talk about some of your losses for a second? In what capacity could that possibly be out of bounds? And people were saying, well, there's things that are more interesting than her, than that. Really? What? What could you ask her that could possibly be more interesting than that? It's taboo. It's by definition the most interesting. I had someone online, very smart person, very nice person, saying, "What? This is an Olympic medalist who's into Pokemon. Who gives a fuck? Who cares? That's so boring and uninteresting and irrelevant." Here's what's relevant, Ronda. Never in the history of the fight game has there ever been a fighter who has been this unwilling to talk about their losses, yet still wants some kind of a public life. How can you reconcile the two? That is the most important first question to ask, because it's reality. It's staring you in the face. And you want people to ask her about her Pokemon? Fucking what? What planet are we living on here, man? The only reason we are talking about this to begin with is because she can't answer a basic question, yet still wants to do media. Go back to UFC 207. What did I say? I said the same thing after John Jones was like, I don't like you, Luke. Great. I don't care. They don't owe us anything. They don't have to talk to us. There are certain norms that should be preserved in the interest of, I think, creating a better sport, but they're not rules. They're not rules. Now, the fighters might have rules with the UFC, but not with us. They don't have to tell us anything. They don't have to answer our questions. I didn't care that she didn't want to talk to us. I just saw it as a really ominous sign. You want to be a prize fighter and you can't answer questions from the media? And you think the media is the problem here? Like, in this day and age, man, where we're living in this balkanized media ecosystem, where everyone just gets the kind of media that they want to get and they tailor it exactly to their epistemological preferences and needs. And there's no real reaching across the aisle, whether it's sort of political or any other kind of fault line of ideas. Right? The idea that in this environment, media is always at fault is really popular. It's really popular today to be like, oh, that's the media's fault. And believe me, I am not here to absolve them of blame. In fact, you could make quite a nice living having not just a site about media criticism, but like really substantive, excellent media criticism. However, it is also true that that is the last refuge of somebody who is out of ideas. Both can be true. Oh, it's the media's fault for asking questions. How the fuck is it our fault, man? It's our job. And if you answer it like a normal person under any normal circumstance, we just move on. We just move on. Did you really think at the end of March, I'd be talking about this? When all that stuff went down with her? Never in my wildest imaginations. You don't have to do the media. You don't have to. But if you do the media, what is it you're expecting? Hey, Rhonda, tell us about manga. Huh? What? Who would do such a thing? That's not reality. It's not real life. And this ain't Players Tribune. You want to be patted on the back and have questions asked of you that you approve of ahead of time? Go find Kelly Ripa, man. Shouts to everyone at ESPN who didn't do that. And yeah, Mike Golic being like, would you go back in time? Oh, my God, Mike. See, Mike Golic, that's why you lost the show with Greeny, right? Because you just stumble like a jackass. All right? And then Max Kellerman, I thought his question was fine. He hemmed and hawed a little bit. But her up. Hey, Rhonda, people might have said, but don't you think those negative things really miss the point? That you're an incredible achievement? A success by any measurement. And she got froggy with that. It's, ladies and gentlemen, name another prize fighter at any point in life who has ever reacted this way to losses. Name one. Name one. The media is asking questions about it because it's fair to ask anyway. It's especially fair to ask given her reaction, because her reaction is historically without precedent. And you want me to ask about manga or ESPN, whatever? Not me, but ESPN to ask about, I mean, guys, you got to come back to reality on this one. The only reason this is a topic is because she can't find a way. And them's the breaks. That's how it goes. Hey, I want to be on ESPN and I want you to answer this sheet of approved questions ahead of time. By the way, I've gone and taken the liberty of tattooing handprints on your ankles so you know where to grab whenever an animal comes on the show, because that's the position we're going to leave you in. You know, I mean, please be serious. Please be serious. This is absurd. And treating it as anything other than absurd, like it's the media's fault that we did all this, that we were the hurtful ones. Yeah, I'm sure there has been some media that has been out of bounds. And I'm sure there's been some editorializing that has been unfair. And I'm sure that some of that has to hurt. And for that, I extend my sympathies to any public figure. There's nothing I can do other than try to do the fair and honest and right thing. I can do no more. I can do no less. But to just lazily blame the media because you're acting in a way. And by the way, her losses were not great, right? We can all agree. But as Max Kellerman noted, all the best lose, right? Unless you're Floyd Mayweather and you get a little bit lucky and you have this incredible career where you can just carve out, you know, a special path for yourself. But all the real ones, they all lose. They all lose, man. Nothing special about it. If answering questions like that is so troubling, here's the last piece of this. This will come up again. Not the losses in MMA. Eventually, people are just going to get tired of asking that. You're right, right? Eventually, people will just get tired of asking that. But here's the reality. It will come up again. It will come up again. Some kind of failure of hers, because we are all, in the end, losers to some extent, right? No one wins forever. We have all lost. We have all suffered. Hold on. I gotta. We have all suffered. We have all dealt with setback, right? I can't imagine what she went through, but I know other prize fighters have. And they just get up and keep going. Here's my point. If you don't have the emotional and psychological resources to at least put up some kind of a front to get through an ESPN car wash, some other misfortune, and I'm not wishing it upon anyone. In fact, knock on wood, it never happens. But in all likelihood, some other kind of setback is going to happen down the line. And if you can't deal with this or some of the other previous instantiations of failure, what's going to happen when the next one comes? It's just going to repeat itself, the process. So it's real nice and it's real easy. Oh, it's the media. All right, it's the media. Sure, whatever helps you sleep at night. But we all know the truth. And the truth is this is a abnormal inability to deal with what I'm sure is painful but ultimately solvable setback. That setback will happen again in your professional career, and then what will you do? All right. All right. Let's see here. Let's go to these questions now. First one. Israel Adesanya and creating separation. Hi, Luke. One of the fights coming up that I'm most looking forward to is Israel Adesanya versus Marvin Vettori in Glendale. God, that fight is going to be so good, right? One of the biggest problems that Israel had in the Rob Wilkinson fight was not stopping the takedown, but was creating separation afterwards, which led him to, which led to him frequently being stalled against the wall. So, Luke, how do you create good separation after stopping a takedown? And do you think Israel will be able to fix this problem by the time the fight comes around? There's lots of ways you can do it, right? Partly is just minding your shot selection and your footwork, your space relative to the cage. It's trying to turn on someone once an underhook is fired. There's a lot of different ways just about creating a condition so that you don't have to worry about that before the takedown is attempted. And then once they get on you, it can be a little bit of a difference. But who's really good at that? One of the best ways to do it, I would look at Tyron Woodley and I would look at Robert Whitaker. And what they prevent is they prevent any kind of establishment of hand tying, any kind of gripping. They control grips and then use that to slip their hips out of space. And there's a lot of different scenarios about that. We can't go through all of them. But one of the big keys to that is if someone gets you against the cage, they might have an underhook and then they might have a bicep control. And there's ways you can get out of that. You can dig in, pull the head, and get across. Right? There's lots of things you can do. But eventually what they're going to want to do is they want to get a takedown. They got to get their hands together. And once they go down, if you can separate that, you create a big opening to step around, to scoot out, to push around. It's not, don't let him get this. No C grip, no gable grip, no nothing. Do that. Now, whether he can do it, I don't know. We'll see. This was always one of Paul Daly's problems. Paul Daly would be able to stop a takedown, like he wouldn't go to the floor, although more recently he has gone to the floor. But there was a time when he was really working on his takedown defense, and he would get taken down, and he would not get taken down. He would get pushed against the fence, and then he would get stuck there a little bit. So he would be not in trouble, but he would be offensively muted. It just comes with time. But Adesanya appears to be one of these guys who has a real sharp eye and a natural ability to sponge up technique. The finer points of it, it's just a matter of practice. Once he starts to figure out what shots he can throw at certain intervals, in certain spaces, he really begins to break apart the hands, right? Not letting the hands come together, creating pockets. He'll be in good space. All right. Also, can you please unblock me on Twitter? Someone says, Luke, you enjoy blocking people. Don't even have to be for a good reason. What is a good reason? There's no such thing as a good or bad reason to block somebody. This is made up. I have my own reasons. Either you are pleasant on social media or you are not. Your notion of whether that is good or not is irrelevant. Also, that is not why I blocked you. Okay. Till versus Thompson. Now that this fight has been announced, what are your thoughts? Didn't think it was going to happen. By the way, it has not been announced officially. It's been reported on a couple of sites, but it has not been announced officially. But let's assume that it happens, right? Didn't think it was going to happen. I thought they would go in an absolutely separate direction, but they didn't. I mean, who couldn't be excited for it, right? Striker versus. I thought they wouldn't do it for that reason. I thought they would, I thought for sure Wonder Boy would just balk, but they must have leaned on him in some kind of way or told him this would be a good fight for you, or I don't know. They've convinced him otherwise. But anyway, long story short, I think it's tremendous. It still doesn't really answer the kinds of questions that fighting Usman would answer, but you can get to those a little bit later down the road. Remember what I told you. It was, what they want out of Darren Till, it seems to me, is something like the Conor McGregor treatment, where they believe in him and they believe in his capacity to get good to the point where if you get ranked high enough, they can't shield you from anybody because anybody in that space is going to be able to do all or most of those things. But if you give him the Wonder Boy fight, it's not that Wonder Boy's easy fight. It's just that stylistically, that is a little bit more manageable for him, probably, at least in theory, than the Usman fight, where you've got, a completely separate skill set involved in the one he is naturally gravitated to. Right? Now, that doesn't mean he's going to go in there and just waltz all over Wonder Boy. In fact, he could get, hurt himself. I'm just simply saying, given the opportunity, striker or wrestler, he has a much better chance of success in the striking department, probably. And it gives him time to work on the rest of his game, such that when he has to face the Usmans of the world, he'll be a lot more ready, or readier. So that's my sense. But like the fight itself, it's tremendous. You're gonna have a come forward guy against a guy who likes to move. It's going to be a big test of range. It's going to be a big test of counter fighting, right? It's going to be a big test of timing. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot, and I'm very much looking forward to it. If in fact it finally comes, Gunnar Nelson was announced. Is going to be absolutely tremendous. That card's going to be rocking, man. I really can't wait for UFC Liverpool. I really, really, really can't wait. I'm excited about it. Let's see. Bump, bada, bump, bump. So it says, instead of separating, maybe there's an opportunity, back to the Israel Adesanya question, for counterattacks like short knees, elbows, and throws. That too, right? You could use that as there's a lot of distancing standpoint. You got to get the hands separated. Once the hands get separated, if I can't get my hands together, what can I do? Very, very little. Till versus Thompson, blah, 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 blah. Okay, illegal moves. Hearing that, Jesus Christ, my eyesight is fading. Kritsada Kong Srichai Hearing that his awesome win via suplex, I did see it, is now being overturned due to disqualification really bums me out. Should suplexes really be illegal in mixed martial arts? No, I don't think they do. I don't think they should be. Especially in one. I thought one solved this problem by simply saying, well, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to make it all illegal. You know, maybe not every single thing. Like there's, you know, they don't allow like eye gouging or hair pulling. But in terms of the repertoire of things they could do on the ground, they simplified it by simply making many, many things illegal. Legal. I'm sorry. Remember we had talked about this with what do you do with the Jeremy Stevens situation? One of the major things is the more rules you add and the more nuances you add to the rules, the harder it becomes to enforce, especially when you don't have instant replay of any kind, right? So that was really their gimmick, right? That was their bit. Hey, we're the place where you can do all this stuff. So I find it somewhat contradictory just given their ethos. And number two, I don't know what the science is behind it. I've seen people get KO'd from a suplex, but not as often as I have from a punch to the face. Now, they happen more infrequently than that, but do we have any data to suggest that they are uniquely dangerous in the way in which they're applied, in particular this one? I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what the organization is for now. They're going to be extra cautious because of that, which I can appreciate. I think we can all appreciate that. But nevertheless, there should be some kind of coherence to the rule set. And, you know, allowing me to knee someone on the ground but not suplex them seems a little odd. It's not like a suplex feels money, but I don't think it's as bad as as relevant as. So it says, I think spiking has been banned already. If a suplex spikes the guy on his head or neck, it should be subject to the same rules. People have gotten paralyzed from spiking. Spiking, yeah, but you can throw someone in time. Who was, I think, Charlie, one of those back in WEC days, and he hit it with a release, no less. And it was totally fine. I'm sure it hurt like a bastard, but again, I don't know that it's so dangerous that it requires spiking straight down. I could see yes, but as long as you're in the arc and you're on the balls of your feet arching, and you've got a good arch and a bridge, I'm not sure I know what and you land, you know, reasonably in that shoulder to back of the head space. I'm not opposed to outlawing anything if there's really good evidence to suggest it's a problem, but I didn't see this as spiking. UK commentary team. Luke, did the U.S. broadcast of UFC London Hard the fights, or is that UK only? Well, the good news is it was airing only on Fight Pass, so as a consequence, it was only Dan Hardy and John Gooden, so they were great. If they were doing the commentary as I expect, then how highly do you rate them, and how well do you think they come across to the U.S. viewing public? Well, I don't know anyone in the U.S. viewing public who doesn't like them. Having a British or otherwise non-American commentator, I don't think is the end of the world like it used to be. I mean, I know some networks are hesitant hesitant to have like both members. So, for example, if you want to watch La Liga here or certain games, okay, so if you want to watch La Liga here or Serie A here, for example, and including the French league, but I mean, who watches the French league? You have to watch beIN Sport, and that will include, but is not limited to, Phil Shane and Ray Hudson. Ray Hudson is Scottish. Now, his accent is not particularly thick, but it is quite noticeable, particularly for his turn of the phrase. No one bats an eye. Who is the Argentinian guy who is on Fox when they do all their soccer stuff? I forget his name. But, oh, God, what is his name? In any case, you have that pretty common as well. And there's a variety of other combos where at least one person in the booth will be either a not native English speaker or somebody who has, you know, a non-American English accent. I think the guy, by the way, who's like the Bundesliga analyst, Ian Joy, has the Scottish accent as well, right? So It's pretty usual, but when you watch Premier League games on NBC Sports, both of them are British. So it's like, or you have Ian Dark when they had World Cup on ESPN. I can keep going with this. Like, it happens over and over and over and over again. It's just the two at the same time, I think, gives people the heebie-jeebies. But I don't know why. Like, who would listen to Dan Harden and John Gooden, and be American and be like, well, I don't need the Queen's English here to get my MMA. I mean, I'm sure there's some idiot out there who feels that way, but by and large, I think most Americans are quite receptive to them, as they should be. They're maybe, you know, I don't know if they're the very, 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 very best UFC duo, but they hold their own with any team. Great pairing. John Gooden is criminally underrated. I think Dan Hardy is finally starting to get some of the appreciation that he deserves as an analyst. And they're great. They're great. Like, they did one show here where they were the two, it was on American television, and they both were on. And I noted it because I was like, I remember, this is a good business move. In general, does it offer much, or is it a case of anything Connor's associated with will make the event bigger? I don't know who that is. Is it kind of an insult by the UFC to the winner, as some people might view it, as stealing the victorious fighter's thunder and not letting them have their moment? Love to know your thoughts. I don't mind it personally. In fact, I rather prefer it. Your mileage will vary. It's not like one way is the right answer, another one is not. I think it depends on the fight. I think it depends on the fighter. Like, if those two guys, Habib and Tony, go to war and they're both looking, okay. So let's say it's something like Condit Lawler, where both guys at the end, remember that they had their arms up on the fence, they could barely move. I think bringing in a fighter after that would be incredibly disrespectful, right? That was so good, you just got to let that one go. You just got to let it go. You can't. And one guy's going to be so, after 25 minutes of just being thrashed around, you know, what kind of state of mind is he in? However, let's say someone goes in there, and which one you want to say it is, whether it's Habib or it's Tony, one guy goes in there and puts the beat down on the other guy, stops him inside of 2. I think then it would make a lot of sense, right? So you have to really kind of play with it a little bit and not have a hard and fast rule like he's going in there and that's what that's going to be. That can get you into trouble, or at least this kind of concern you're talking about, where somebody's performance gets overshadowed. You don't want to do that. But at the same time, you don't want to miss a good opportunity. I think it was Michelle Joy Phillips on Twitter. I saw this. I don't know if it's been confirmed anywhere. Oh, what happened? The stream is lagging a bunch. Looks fine on my end. I don't know what to do about it. Just stream died for a good 30 seconds. We had a Comcast outage here in the neighborhood this morning. I apologize. Look, there's nothing I can do. It's Comcast. It's good right now. All right. Jesus. Story of my life, bro. Oh, you know what? I got to get the hard line in. All right. Well, rule for next time. I'll get the hard line in. Apologies, everyone. I had no idea. Power through. All right. Let's power through. Back to the question at hand. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. As I mentioned, you have to play it by ear. I think that's really probably the best way to go. I think if they can make a way to, I think if they can find a way to make it work, they should. Anyway, back to Michelle Joy Phillips. I saw that Deontay Wilder wanted to fight in Cardiff this weekend, but was told he wouldn't be able to enter the ring. So he said, well, F it. If I can't enter the ring, then I don't want to go. I don't know if that's been confirmed. I'm merely putting that out there as unconfirmed, just so that's clear. But you can see the idea. You can see the idea. All right. Greg Hardy, NFL Combine, freak athletes in MMA. Luke, you made me think about this a few weeks ago when talking about the NFL Combine. Do you think Greg Hardy has the potential to be something big in MMA? 6'5", 265, and the kind of explosive power that makes a good NFL player. And only 29. He's pretty young for the Division 3-0 in his amateur career. Talking about his Combine Pro Day years ago at 281, he had a 36-inch vertical. Still pretty good. Did the 40 and 4.79, and then did 21 reps on the bench. It's okay. Right. Not exactly off the charts Combine numbers, but pretty dang impressive. Quite a bit better than I'd imagine the typical 6'5" donk who decides to try MMA can do. And I guess the related question has to be, at what point do you think the UFC would sign him? Say if he goes 4-0 as a pro, does that get him a contract with the big boys? I note that Dana was happy to make a boatload of money by being involved in a Mayweather fight, right? Although Mayweather didn't have – I mean, Mayweather has as much baggage but had more immunity at the same time too. So I don't know what that's about. But – yeah, I think they probably would. And it wouldn't take much. 4 or 5 fights, something like that. I wouldn't quite put them on the same Mackenzie Dern track, right? Where they have to sort of really closely monitor and they give him a contract up front. And then he goes and fights in these regional organizations and they pay his purse anyway. But yeah, it wouldn't. The answer is it wouldn't take much. Probably wouldn't take much. But it also depends how he looks. Like one of the guys that I don't know if you guys saw it. Greg Hardy fought one guy, and the dude, like, literally ran away from him, as if it was like a chicken being hunted by a wolf or something in the barnyard. You know, that doesn't really tell us a lot. You know, so provided he has sturdier challenges than that, then yeah, you could probably see him sooner rather than later. Someone says, I was also wondering how MMA fighters compare to football players in these combine drills. So I looked up the best player I could find was Eric Anders, right? 6'1", 242. He played outside linebacker for Alabama, which if you're European, you don't know, that's about as good as it gets at the collegiate level. It doesn't get any better than that. Signed as a free agent to the Cleveland Browns. His 40 was 4.69. Bench was 22. Vertical jump 28. Broad jump 111. Now compare that to Vic Beasley, outside linebacker for Clemson, 8th overall draft pick, right? He's 6'3", 246 for the Atlanta Falcons. He ran a 4.53 40. Good Lord. Bench press of 35, vertical jump of 41, and a broad jump of 130. Yeah, I mean, the ones that make it are like dumb athletes. Dumb athletes. Yeah, that's insane. I mean, who was it? Saquon Barkley had something like 30-plus reps, a 41-inch vertical, and on like a 4.4. I mean, something insane. But yeah, you can see that athletically, there's just a big drop-off on our heavyweight side. I do love the combine, though. More questions about speed versus Bob over this time. His magic, really? I don't. Luke, apology. It's not. But if Habib or emphatic stoppage next week, and it's announced that the UFC Fight Week has to be headlined by the winner against McGregor, how do you do events of old? He is firmly in the mainstream now, following the Mayweather fight, which will now attract further attention from casuals and more mainstream media outlets. How will that impact his fights now? Also, he has this, just, it's like 70 questions here. Also, he has lost some of his magic now that he has achieved belts in 2 weight classes and boxed one of the best boxers of his generation. Do you think he is getting further and further away from his humble roots beginning? Okay, well, there's like a billion questions here. Let's go back to the first one. If Habib or Tony win by emphatic stoppage next week, and it's announced the UFC Fight Week is to be headlined by the winner against McGregor, how do you headline McGregor will feel compared to the McGregor events of old? I think they will look very similar. Probably a little bit different. He'll have a little bit more of a kingmaker vibe, right? Or a king-made vibe, depending on your perspective. But I don't think he'll get away from that at all. I don't think he'll have any less edge. Conor McGregor does not lack for confidence. Does not like having technical issues. It's unwatchable. Man, what do you want me to do? I can do nothing. I don't know. I'm just going to go through with it, and that's just going to be what it's going to be. How about that? All right. No, I don't expect any change. Well, I mean, change, yes, but not change in the direction you're talking about, where he comes in there all, limp-wristed and bad posture and not really giving the zings back. I don't buy that. I don't see that happening at all. I think Conor, his next event, could easily do 2 million buys. Easily. No problem at all. All right. You know what? Should I try and plug in this thing? I'd have to take a moment on the thing to go do it. I don't know if I want to do that. Rather than just muddle through. I don't know what to do. Dagger. Fuck it. I'm just going to keep going. All right. Tony Ferguson. Let's see. Sean. All right. Hold on. Time out. I'm going to go plug in. I'm going to plug in this thing with a hard line. I'll be back in 20 seconds. I apologize. Wait here. Hang on, y'all. Here we are. Right. Let's see if that will help. I don't know that it will because I'm still on Wi-Fi, but can't hurt. All right. Let's get back to it. Sorry, y'all. Still working out the kinks. Okay, Tony Ferguson. Why do I not see the rubber guard used more often? I'm an MMA fan that comes from being a longtime fan of boxing. I've never took part in any martial arts, but because of growing up and watching boxing, I tend to understand more of the striking aspects of MMA on the ground. Got it. Okay. In this respect, could you help me understand why more MMA athletes do not use the rubber guard? Is it just down to flexibility? Is it that other BJJ instructors will not adapt another's ideas? So only a 10th Planet student will use it? Well, no. I think predominantly 10th Planet students will use it. But look, it's not very effective. No one wants to tell you that. It can be effective if somebody's really, really good at it, like a Ben Saunders, right? If you put a ton of time into it, you've got the right kind of body type for it, you perfect it with a lot of practice, it can be valuable to you. But I don't think that a lot of extra detail and attention specific to that position that may be of no value to you otherwise. And also, it's just hard to get good at. Like, it's hard. I mean, it's hard to get good at guard anyway, but this notion that, like, rubber, look, I just don't buy some of the theories around the rubber guard. In pure grappling, rubber guard can be very, very effective. You've seen a lot of guys have a lot of success. I think it's changed the way in which the guard is used in many ways. Obviously, in the no-gi context, less so in the no-gi context. Here we are. Is it still going? But I don't see a lot of evidence that it has, and it was designed for MMA, right? Keep somebody closer. They can't really strike. They can't really posture. They can't really do a whole lot. And again, I think under the right practitioner, it probably could. But is it something that is widely available? Number one, you can't go to a lot of schools and learn it. yes, 10th Planet can do it, and some non-10th Planet, but it's not widely available. And then beyond that, how good at it do you have to be before it becomes of real value in a fight at an elite level? Probably very, very good. And in that time, you're not spending time training some other things that might be more applicable type or your needs. So to me, it's like, yes, it can be effective in the right circumstance for the right person. And there are plenty of guys you can point to who have, in no-gi grappling, very good rubber guards. Gio Martinez, in MMA, Ben Saunders. But this idea that it was going to like revolutionize guard or change the way fighting happened on the ground, you know, reminds me of sort of like Mexico is the new Brazil. No, it's not. How's the signal? I hope it is good. I hope it is better now. But I don't know if it's still powering off the Wi-Fi. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening. Okay, Conor versus winner of Habib versus Tony. If you absolutely 100% had to place a bet today, do you think Conor fights in MMA this year? Yes. And is the fight against the winner of Tony versus Habib? Yes. Yes to both. But those are just bets, not guarantees. I really don't know. Okay. Till versus Thompson. Who do you think will win this fight, Luke? Probably Thompson, but it's not that I don't believe in Till in the sense of like, I know Darren Till can't. So when someone says, I don't believe in somebody, you have to actually be very, very careful what that means. That doesn't mean I don't think he can rise to the occasion and be something better than he is. In fact, given his youth, what, 26 years old or so, Darren Till? This is the kind of guy that like fight over fight over fight over fight over fight over fight really becomes something different every time. I'm just saying, up to this point, have we seen enough to affirmatively conclude he has a very good chance of beating Wonderboy Thompson? No. But the exciting part about that is he's changing fight over fight. He appears to have an insane amount of self-belief. Wonderboy Thompson's been through the ringer a little bit, and it's a fun test. So I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see it. It's excellent in every way. Any big X factors? Till's gas tank, if it goes long. Wonderboy's defensive boxing. And when defensive boxing, I don't mean actually, it could be countershotting, but more of just finding a way to get out of the way rather than just using his legs, using everything. Prediction of who will win. I will lean Wonderboy, but only because I know more about Wonderboy affirmatively than I know about this new and improved Darren Till. That's the only reason. It's the only reason. I have no question, but please questions about Ronda. All right, well, I won't get back into it. MMA's wasted talents. Luke, is there an MMA fighter out there who you would class as wasting their talents? Maybe somebody who hasn't achieved their full potential for whatever reason. Maybe it's because of a lack of discipline like John Jones, not being in the promotion like Ben Askren, injury like Chris Holdsworth, or through legal issues outside of the cage, Lee Murray. Well, you named some pretty good ones. I don't have anything to add to that. Although waste is such a strong word. Like, really, when I think of wasted talent, I think of like Rico Rodriguez. Not that he would have gone on winning forever, to borrow the words from Max Kellerman, but that did he ultimately get as far as he really could have? I don't think he did. You know, I don't think he did. He was that first guy who could wrestle, he could do jiu-jitsu, he could strike, was a good athlete. You know, he was that first kind of prototype in the heavyweight division, and a little bit smaller than some of the bigger guys too, right? Big guy, but not like a giant, like a Tim Sylvia or something. And he did get far. It's not that he didn't do things in the sport, but he didn't get as far as he could have. Someone says Brock and Ronda. Brock could have been something special. Diverticulitis in pro wrestling took his prime away from us. And then this person writes, Ronda, terrible coach. There's no doubting her ability in the past, at least. Would have been great to watch her under a decent coach. Yeah. Sure. All right. Which 5 countries have the highest impact on the UFC's income in your estimation? Ooh, easy. Well, okay, let's see. Let me think about that. US, Brazil. I'm going to say Canada. And then it becomes a question of UK, Ireland, probably a little too small, but maybe. Australia. So in no particular order, well, US first, obviously. US, Brazil, Canada, UK, Ireland, and Australia. So eliminate Ireland. So probably somewhere in there. UK, Australia, Canada, US, and Brazil. Right? Probably something like that. Someone says US, Brazil, Canada, and Japan. I don't think Japan is even close to top 5 for them. Is MMA bigger in Japan than, say, in Germany? Well, MMA is not even legal in Germany. Well, no, it is legal now, but for a long time, it wasn't even legal in Germany. So, yeah, MMA is bigger in Japan than it is in Germany or the UK. That's a difficult one for me to assess. I don't really know how big MMA is in Japan. I mean, I have some idea, obviously, and some idea by the UK. That's a better question for somebody who's in those markets, who also understands the US market. I'm a little too divorced from that to have any kind of clear sense of things. Let's see. Best forgotten fights. That's a great question. I'm binge watching fights on Fight Pass and YouTube during this lull, and it has reminded me that there are a ton of incredible fights we've all forgotten about. Everyone remembers Edgar Maynard, Stan Silva, Griffin Bonner. What are some of the other greatest fights that we never talk about anymore? Here are a couple I came across. Condit Ellenberger. Oh my God, I did forget about that one. Francisco Rivera versus John Linacre. Anyone want to add anything to that list? Oh, man. You could go on forever with that one. As I mentioned before, one of my favorite fights, if you've never seen it, Diego Sanchez versus Carl Parisian. Carl Parisian got a tooth launched from the clinch in that one. They were locked up. I think it was underhook, wrist control, and Diego launched a knee, and it hit him in the chin, and the tooth went. And they watched the tooth fly in slow motion. It's pretty great. That's one of my favorite ones. Of course, Diaz versus Daly is a great one. The Melendez versus Thompson trilogy was a great one for Strikeforce. I'm trying to think of some other ones that really sort of stand the test of time. Frank Shamrock versus Tito Ortiz is a great one. We talked about that one last week. Oh, by the way, I still can't find that Frank Shamrock book that I was mentioning before. God, what else, man? What else? I'm trying to think here. Some great fights that have folks forgotten about. Matt Lindland versus Rampage Jackson over at WFA. Killer fight. Absolutely killer fight. Very tough one, too. Naoya Ogawa getting the shit beat out of him by Fedor was awesome. That was a great one. What are some other really, really good ones? Oh, Anderson Silva versus, was it Tony Frickland? He did the on-block elbow, too. That was pretty great. Cyborg, the male Cyborg versus Melvin Manhoff from Cage Rage. If you guys have never seen Cage Rage, man, Cage Rage is chock full of great fights. You can go check those out. There's a bunch, man. Obviously, both huge trig fights. They went into the Hall of Fame. You could play this game for a long time. There's a lot of fights that were really, really good that a lot of folks don't remember. The Hermes Franca and Sean Shirk. I wouldn't call it the most exciting fight, but it was a pretty good one. Yeah, like that. Oh, Yves Edwards, Josh Thompson is a good one. Play this game all day, baby. Play this game all day. Dun, 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 dun. All right, how's the stream looking now? Looking better? Picking up? Staying focused? Or as Jim Zorn would say, staying positive, acting medium. Welterweight. Hi, Luke. With the news about the interim title fight being created at welterweight, I know. Is it not fair to say that Woodley has legitimate complaints about how the UFC has treated him before? It did not seem so clear, but considering that he has not been out for all that long relative to other champs, namely Conor, it seems pretty clear that the UFC is treating Woodley differently than other champs. I mean, look, we've talked about this before. Woodley complaining it wasn't necessarily a function of what he was saying was false. It was that there was so much of it. It just sort of, people got numb to it. And so the question was, what is the most effective strategy to convey your grievances? Not are those grievances real or imagined? They're real. They're pretty clearly real. All of them to the extent that he says they are, well, that's debatable. But I don't think he's like walks around like confused about the world. He kind of understands his place in it. He seems like a pretty bright guy. In any case, this is an interesting one for me. My initial I got to tell you something. My initial reaction to this was, my initial reaction was I couldn't believe it, but I have come to change my opinion a little bit. Number one, they probably just want a title fight, right, or to make out of it, and that degrades the titles. But the titles have already been pretty degraded. So I'll just give you a bit of a spoiler. On my personal YouTube channel, I'm going to have a video coming out. I had a statistician come to the studio, and who's an MMA fan. He's a PhD candidate here in Washington, D.C. at one of the universities. I won't tell you much more than that. And specializes in stats work. He has done what I would call comfortably the most exhaustive and of UFC fighter pay ever. And I'm not going to give you all the, I'm going to wait for that video for you guys to see everything. But one of the major findings is that all other things being equal, so if two fighters have the exact same records, all the same factors that contribute to fighter pay, and raise it, someone with a belt versus not is going to get paid 112% more on average per fight, right? 112% more with someone else with the exact same accomplishments relative to how fighter pay is determined. So when Daniel Cormier says, I'm going to take this title even though I lost the fight to John Jones, it would be financially reckless not to do that, right? You'd be giving up more than double the purse, right? 112% double, or 112% added to what your purse is what you would make on average when you have a belt. So in the absence of a collective bargaining agreement, I don't know how comfortable I am just cannibalizing every division by doing this, I have to say. But on the other hand, it's a way for guys to get paid who ordinarily would not get paid this kind of money. There is a net I don't know if it's a net positive. There is a positive to be had there. It's a complicated debate because now you're watering down titles. What does this say to a champion who fought 4 times in a calendar year and was ready to go by July, ostensibly? What does this mean that we have to have pay-per-views with all these titles all the time? Right, there's a series of complicated questions here. But if there is one net positive, it is Colby Covington. I know you don't just sub in X and Y, X fighter versus Y fighter. They are, all other things being equal, going to have their pay upped, each of them, by at a bare minimum, or at least on average anyway, 112% each. Right, that's the average that happens every time. All other factors being held. So pretty okay with that, to be quite honest. Okay, this reminds me of that, like, you guys ever seen that Twitter feed? I'm not racist, right? Where someone says, I'm not racist, but, and then the Twitter feed retweets it, and it's always, yes, you're racist. Anyway, someone goes, I really, really don't want to sound like a misogynist prick, but would UFC as a product lose any appeal if it got rid of the division, women's strawweight? I respect the Muay Thai of Ioana Jędrzejczyk and the creativity of Rose, but for 99% of 115-pound fights, I find myself giving a few minutes before they inevitably end, with both competitors struggling against the cage and the action occasionally broken up by some basic, utterly unthreatening striking, at which point I start watching at 2 times the speed. I rarely see any great BJJ either. Let's see. 125 pounds, women's flyweight, hasn't seemed much better with either decisions being completely predictable. I can't remember which event it was recently where they had 3 sub bantamweight ladies fight in a row, and it sucked momentum right out of the crowd, and the event took a while to recover. Am I out of line here? Is 115 good enough to hang? Are the fights outside of the top 3 or 4 fighters good enough to be on the main card of a decent pay-per-view? So there's a couple of factors involved here. I would submit to you that if you don't like women's bantamweight, you don't like women's flyweight, that's okay. Look, you like what you like. You like what you like. You don't like women's MMA, you don't like women's MMA. I'm not going to beat you over the head about it. It's okay. What I can say is, if you're going to like a division inside women's MMA, it's going to be 115 pounds, because that is the most complete to me. Now, what you're articulating is something that's real, which is that there's hardly anybody at 125 that is worth paying attention to. Even at 135, it doesn't seem like it used to be. We don't have these, we don't have Beatriz Mesquita coming over from jiu-jitsu. We have Mackenzie Dern, but she's the first of these matriculators over. You just don't have the same level of depth and breadth in the women's divisions that you do in the men. These are all facts. These are all facts. And people who are big acolytes of women's MMA, which frankly I consider myself one of them, you have to acknowledge it. Now, it's not to say that at the very, very elite level of women's MMA that you can't look at them and quite look. Joanna and Rose, you can just look at and be like, okay, well, these are pretty clearly excellent MMA fighters by virtually any measurement. But you're right. Looking at the division as a whole and looking at women's MMA as a whole, it's not on the same level. It's just not, and we can't pretend that it is. So if you're noticing that and that's giving you pause, I have no quarrel. Only thing I would suggest is give 115 a try. I think that's that sweet spot you're going to find, like 155, 170, for me 155, but at 145 to 175, 170 or so, that there's a bit of a sweet spot there. Jesus Christ. Who are these donks? I think that's the sweet spot where you're just going to get the best athletes. You're going to get the most amount of really good fighters stacked into that particular category. It just needs some time to fill out. I'm not saying I'm not saying women's strawweight is the equivalent of men's lightweight. It's not what I'm saying, but it might be something kind of close relative to what they have to offer. Legalizing PEDs, it would never happen, but if it did, could this fix all of our issues? No, because it would create a series of new harms, which I'm perfectly willing to admit. Also, who's your pick between King Kong and Godzilla in 2020? I know you're super stoked for that film. King Kong. Oh, you got to go with the gorilla, right? King Kong. Forget Godzilla. On a serious note about PEDs, Luke's thoughts on Josh Barnett USADA issue. I'm very curious to hear Luke's thoughts on this. I must say, I'm surprised nobody asked Luke yet about Barnett and USADA, because they don't want. Truth is not a popular product. You're not going to get rich telling everybody about the truth. I know that's a fiction we tell ourselves in high school. I'm going to be a truth teller. You're going to be broke as fuck. That's what you're going to be. You're going to be living in a van down by the river. That's what you're going to be, because truth is not popular. Very, very rarely is it popular, but it's not. Very few people get rich telling the truth. Most of them go to jail, like whistleblowers. Instead of Ronda Rousey's annoying behavior, maybe fans and for sure some reporters could pay more attention about this, which is actually a serious case. Well, I'm not sure who you would consider lagging on this one. Trying to book him on my show. It's been a little more difficult than I imagined because he's busy with scheduling, as I understand it. But he talked to Mark Ramundi, he talked to Brett Okamoto, he talked to he's making rounds. People are talking about it. Guys, this is what we asked for. This is what we asked for. We asked for, apparently, a system of anti-doping whose process is so burdensome that even when you are what is basically fully exonerated, you don't have enough guarantees about a speedy process, right? To even when you win, you still lose. It is heads you win with you. It's heads USADA wins, tails you lose with USADA. That's how it goes every time, right? There are no. I cannot believe the fighters don't unionize at this point. I cannot believe it. From the stories of Bradley Scott out there, not getting the money he should have with basic guarantees, to Josh Barnett, losing 18 months of his career off something where he was basically exonerated. and then now you've got these TV negotiations happening, and the fight against a fighter, right, where they're in this position and it's deeply it's not advantageous. But as I mentioned last week, I can't fix it for them. Their managers aren't going to fix it for them. No one's going to fix it for them. They have got to do it. And one of the things that they would do if they got off their asses and actually did it a little bit here and worked together, and maybe they will with Project Spearhead, we'll see, is they could find a way in crafting a new anti-doping policy, because I think most of them would want some kind of anti-doping apparatus, would be that if you're going of things, there has to be a timeline on at which point, if you have not happened, the case is dismissed or whatever. Like, how you have a right to a attorney, and there's some kind of a notion about a speedy trial. They can't just give you a trial 20 years after your arrest or something. They have to really do this in a reasonably quick timeline. They would need to have some kind of guarantees about that, but they don't have those guarantees. You don't have any guarantee. So this is where we're at. Everybody cheered this on, saying this is going to be great. We're going to get all the cheaters. Yeah, you know who you're also going to get? You're going to get a lot of people with false accusations whose names are going to be tarnished. You're going to get people like Josh Barnett, who I recognize has a bit of a checkered past. However, in this particular case, arbitration panel, all it really was just at him. They effectively called him not a cheater, not a drug cheater, and they took 18 months from him. He is, destroyed. I love living in a world where we take the rights of athletes seriously, their right to privacy seriously, the limits of anti-doping seriously, the limits and the harms of doping seriously. And we craft a humane, intelligent, responsible, moral, ethical, and medicinal policy that doesn't create a world where people are losing 18 months of their career just to prove that they were innocent to begin with. That seems to me cruel and inhumane. But that's just me. Tony versus Habib. All right. On paper, i.e. in terms of the stakes, the anticipation, the combined records, the skill level, and the differing styles of both men, I would venture to say that Tony Ferguson versus Habib Nurmagomedov looks in the build-up beforehand like one of the best fights in UFC history and probably the best lightweight fight ever. Can you think of any other fight that in the build-up beforehand looked as good on paper as this? Yes. Penn versus GSP2. Yeah. Oh, and there you go. Someone wrote that. Yep, for sure. Here we go. Habib's worst stylistic. Someone posted a really funny GIF. Habib's worst stylistic matchup. I was recently thinking about who would be. I have to turn the screen off. It's making me laugh. All right, here we go. I was recently thinking about who would be the most likely fighter to give Habib problems. And I figured that this fighter would be a D1 All-American level wrestler, likely able to defend most takedowns and get up if taken down. Hasn't faced many elite wrestlers thus far in the UFC. How do you think he'd match up against Chandler and Gaethje that ever fought him? That's a great question. Someone says a bigger prime Aldo would be a tough matchup. Aldo was someone who specialized in taking out strong wrestlers, great takedown defense, sharp boxing, dangerous kicks, and he liked techniques that took away multiple tools from his opponents, like a stepping knee, knees opponents as they close in the gap. He could also, and by the way, good jab too. He also could fight in multiple ranges. I think he'd just be too small, but if he were bigger, I could see him giving Habib big issues. Yeah, love it. Totally agree with that analysis. That seems right on point to me. Sure. The Chandler one's interesting. I just feel like Habib, because Chandler both those guys take a lot of risks with position. because of the way they strike, right? They're not like sit down and jab and, you know, turning angles kind of thing. So as a consequence, they're open positionally for takedowns. I just wonder if Habib would eventually overwhelm them because of that. But it's a great question, and that's a great response. A big Aldo, not a 145 Aldo, and not even an Aldo at 155, but like a naturally big 155 Aldo. That might be your guy. That's a great question and a great point. I totally agree with that. Good job. Well done, lads. What else we got? Booty, leg, and hip. Hi, Luke. World-renowned sports television personality Stephen A. Smith. Have you heard of him? Have you heard of Stephen A. Smith? Man's got wisdom. Revealed that he was a booty, leg, and hip kind of guy in the video I've linked. So I'm wondering, what is your preference? Yeah. I think you guys know. Let's see. All right. It's a little early, but let's go ahead and go to the Twitter machine. If we can, shoot me a tweet at LThomasNews on Twitter, and I will get to them now. This is a hilarious GIF. Someone saying, I can't even look at this thing straight. Golly. It's making me giggle, man. Hang on. Let's put this on F2. Let's see. All right. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. How many gunnery sergeants told you that you'd end up living in a van down by the river with your plan to cover MMA? None, because I didn't think I'd be doing this when I was in the Marines. So none of them. I got into this by accident. So I was long past the military by the time this came around. I got out of the military when I was 24 years old. I didn't really get into this till I was like, in terms of a career, 26 or so, 27, something like that. Since there's no big UFC this weekend, can you do a Monday morning analyst on the main and co-main events on the April 7th card, talking about each fighter's strengths and weaknesses and providing a prediction along with analysis? Maybe, but here's what I'm going to do instead. I have talked to a very favorite analyst of yours, and I've got a technique talk coming out previewing the main and co-main with that analyst. We had like a 50-minute 5-0 long conversation yesterday. I got to transcribe it up and get it ready for you guys, but I'm going to have good audio for it, turn it into a podcast, the whole nine. So be on the lookout for that on MMA Fighting exclusive. What is stopping fighters from signing the Project Spearhead cards? It seems like there is no downside to doing it with the anonymity of the situation. From what I understand, in my this is anecdotal, totally anecdotal. You'd have to talk to them. And I have talked to Leslie Smith about it as well. Look, there's a couple of things going on here that is preventing some people from signing with them. Number one, they may not know really what the benefit is, right? What really is the benefit of unionization? Like, we talk about these issues all the time, but these guys are living their lives out there. They're, you know, buying diapers and going to jiu-jitsu and sitting in traffic and, you know, having fun with their wives or something. They're just out there living their lives. They may not exactly know like what they have to gain, what they have to lose. They may be a lot of young guys who don't want to rock the boat, right? Some of the more senior ones kind of get it at this point, but a lot of the younger ones don't. So there's that. There's that as well. In terms of specific complaints I've heard, it's that they don't know exactly how anonymous it really is. They feel like they're going to be outed and the UFC will be forever bitter with them. And what are they going to do at that point? So that's one of the ones I've heard. That's a big one. Another one is I've heard, well, they like Leslie Smith and they like, you know, Lucas Middlebrook and all the other players involved, Cajun Johnson, Ally Quinta. But they're like, I got a question from a fighter once who was, you know, can I trust them to do the job effectively? And I was like, well, that's a question for them, but you should know, like, they're not Project Spearhead ultimately. They're just the group trying to set it up. Once it gets set up, everyone else gets elected into different positions. Like, you could elect anybody who signs the card or whatever. They're not like Leslie Smith won't be if Project Spearhead goes forward and then a real union is formed. Some other person's going to lead the effort, and some other person's going to be the treasurer, and some other person's going to be, whatever. You guys will form all of that on your own after the fact. So whatever you might think about these people who are setting it up, positively or negatively, they're only there to do just that, get it going. After that, it's all up to the fighters themselves. And I think, there's some confusion about that. With the rumored UFC return to Calgary this summer, how big of a card do they need to put on to make up for the debacle that was UFC 149? Let's be really honest about this. Not a very big card. Not a very big card. Now, here's what I mean by that. Would it be a very sweet gesture if they put on a really nice card? Of course. They need to for Calgary to come out in full force to support it. Probably not. Now, they need to have a decent card. They got to put some kind of effort into it, right? They can't just go in there and be like, we're just going to have, I don't know, Bob Sapp take a dive and then we'll just call it a day. We're not going to do that. But if they put on a good card, I think all will basically be forgiven. But if you're talking about like what they owe them like UFC 200 or something. But they're going to put like a good card. They're going to give you some good fights. They're going to give you probably a decent headliner. And here's what they should do. They should relax the ticket prices. That's what they should do. That would get them, I think, on everyone's side. It's like, okay, we're going to give you a card that's probably just fine. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to charge you just fine prices for it. I think that would be a better trick. For Renato Moicano versus Cater and Iaquinta versus Felder, who wins? Ooh. Man, Moicano versus Cater is a tough one. I'm going to say Moicano, but I don't really know. And Iaquinta versus Felder is a very tough one. I'm going to say Felder, but that could go a lot of different ways. Someone says, I got Moicano and Iaquinta. Someone says, I have Moicano, but Iaquinta has been off for so long. I don't know. Keep up the good work. Yeah, it's why that card is going to be so great next week. So great. And by the way, something to note here. I've noticed a lot of people being like, oh my God, I miss the fights. I need a fight in my life. I can't sleep at night. I'm so bored. This is how it's supposed to feel. This is how it's supposed to be, right? You want to feel that longing. You want to feel that angst. You want to feel that frustration, because what that turns into when the fights come around is unbridled joy. It's the caterpillar that gives birth to the butterfly, right? That's what that is. So all you people out there being like, oh my God, I wish there were fights this weekend. Well, number one, there's Anthony Joshua, so you can watch that. And number two, the fights are just, at this point, 10 days away. Number three, these hunger pangs you have, that's what gets turned into the sweetness, the joy of the deprivation. The deprivation itself, by the way, gets turned into all the sweet stuff. So the more of that you feel, the more the sweetness you feel when the fight comes around. This is what you're not just supposed to be like numbed out all the time, right? Because then there's no highs, there's no lows. Now, maybe they could have put one on last weekend and then skip this weekend and go on the next one. Fine, whatever. I mean, we could debate that a little bit. I'm just saying you're supposed to feel a little bit of anxiety and a little bit of, difficulty. It makes it good in the end, huh? With Dana looking more disinterested with promoting the UFC and leaning into boxing, how plausible would it be for Scott Coker to take his place at some point? Highly implausible. With the exception of Conor versus Nate at 170, is RDA versus Covington one of the more intriguing fights at 170 in a while? Yes, because Covington can probably out-wrestle RDA, which I know will break the hearts of everybody out there. But he probably can. I don't know that he will, but he can. So that'll be very interesting. Any news on potential matchups for Nate Diaz with his desire to return in May or June? God, I don't know. Luke, Ethernet cable. Yes, I plugged it in. After all these welterweight fights, who do you think the most likely to emerge as the next title contender? And what do you think about the chances to throw in Woodley or RDA and the Colby winner? I have to say, Woodley being off for a year probably doesn't help at age 35, you know. He's a tough, talented guy, obviously. He was champion for a reason, but that can't be good. So, you know, Colby, I don't think is as much of a good matchup for him, but RDA might be. But then again, if RDA can't beat the wrestling of Colby, how is he going to do against Woodley? It'll be interesting to see. It'll be that RDA Colby fight is going to be very, if they make it in the end, is going to be very telling, very telling. Because if RDA has no problems with Colby, like none, let's say, stopping the takedown, oh boy, that is going to be a hell of a fight with Woodley, right? But if you see him struggle and then maybe get by, you might think a little bit differently. Or if he just can't win at all, then Colby versus Woodley is going to be kind of interesting too. So a lot of different ways to look at that one. Ronda tied for a bronze medal, which means she lost up to 2 times on arguably the most prestigious platform of competition. Why has she taken her MMA losses so terribly compared to Olympic judo? She knows how to take a loss and answer for it, would you think? It's a better question for her than it is for me, man. I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe she wrapped it in her. I mean, this is the interesting. It's the crazy part about it to me is like, you know, I saw someone being like, "Oh, she's being so irrational," which I agree with. But in what way? She's not. She's being rational in the sense of being devastated by a loss, right? That's totally understandable. But the irrationality for me comes in not so much with, you know, mean mugging and screwing her face up like a pirate at Max Kellerman or something, but in the depth to which she absorbed the loss. And of course, it's easy for me to say because I didn't have to go through it. But at the same time, her loss is not unique, right? It's historic in many ways, and that must be terribly painful, but it's not unique. There will be others after her that suffer similar fates. There were many before her that suffered similar fates. And the way in which she has internalized it seems to me, she seems to think it's like deeply, there's that GIF again, deeply unique. I think that's the real tragedy there. Is, you know, I'm not saying you just shrug off a loss like it's nothing. That's not real either. But you don't do this to yourself. I don't want to see her in distress like this. Do you? Does anybody want to see her distressed about the kinds of setbacks she suffered? I recently saw someone on Facebook claim that Woodley owes fans exciting fights because they pay for pay-per-views. What do you think about that? Sounds like an entitled opinion to me. I don't think fighters owe us anything. That's a difficult one. I don't know that I agree. Excuse me. I don't know that I disagree with that too much. Look, if you're a fan, and this is a crazy thing to argue, but it's real. If you're a fan, this is a spectator sport, right? Now, the way it's supposed to work is that the sport itself lends itself so naturally to being spectator friendly that you can charge tickets for it, either to watch on TV or in attendance. That's the way it's supposed to work. It is just so naturally friendly that that's the thing. But sometimes it isn't. And so then it gets into a question of, you know, what obligations does the fighter have? Look, the fighter's obligation is to win, always. That's what they're there to do, compete and win. However, I don't blame fans. Look, if a fan goes out there and boos a good ground fight, well, then I just don't care. You know, I just don't care. But like, I'm a little bit over people being like, well, fans have no right to boo the fighters. You sure about that? Like, they boo in every other sport. And sometimes it's disgraceful. Sometimes it's not. They paid money. They're going to voice their opinion. Now, you might, by booing, you might be outing yourself as somebody who has terrible taste in MMA. So there's a bit of a trade-off there as well. But this idea that fans who are paying money, yeah, they don't get to have, they don't get the world. Tyron doesn't owe them in that sense. The UFC sold them a ticket. However, this idea that fans have to sit there in like cold discomfort over things they don't like when we don't ask them to do that in literally any other sport, it seems absurd. What adjustments can you see Joanna former champion, making to win the rematch? She seemed to get thoroughly outclassed on the feet, and I have a hard time believing she can match Rose's ground skills. Is the outcome of the first fight, or is the outcome going to be similar to the first fight? It's a good question. So, did you guys see the picture of her on Instagram? She looked leaned out, man. She's in really good shape. Really good shape. So that was kind of good to see. I think she's working with Phil Daru and what's his face with the tats? Not Mike Dolce, the other one. Who was cyborging everybody? God, how can I not remember this guy's name? What is happening to my brain? In any case, he's working with him. God, what is his name? Hold on. This is just driving me crazy. George Lockhart. Jesus Christ. She's working with George Lockhart a little bit. So I expect her to be ready to rock at that event. I expect her to be ready to go, looking sharp, great shape, the whole nine. I'm very, very excited about it. What could she do differently? It really depends on how much you buy the idea that she was supremely harmed by that weight cut. Was that a fair representation? In which case, she's probably just going to get outboxed again. It may take a little bit longer. Or was she just completely out of it and had no real ability to push back? It really just depends on your perspective. But the thing to consider is that if you talk to Stephen Wright, the war man, the striking coach, he has argued that yes, you've seen Joanna like put it on Jessica Penny and put it on Carla Esparza, but what she really excels at is winning rounds, going the distance. It would make sense for her to try and drag this fight out versus if you're Rose to go right after her. You know, that to me seems like something that I would be looking for the second time around for sure. Anything else here? What did I miss? Anything else? I'm trying to see here. Oh my God. These are just, I mean, absurd people. With the rise of MMA across the globe, could you ever see MMA becoming an Olympic sport? No. No. Luke, why do you think most MMA talking heads or journalists have basically ignored the great work of Mike Russell has done over the years? Are they afraid to lose access? I can only think of a few people outlets that have given him a platform. I'm highly intrigued by his work. I certainly respect his work ethic, number one, and what he tries to do in the space. The only thing I would be concerned about is I'm perfectly willing to believe everything he's written, but I need to see some evidence. That doesn't really apply to Mike Russell. That would apply to anybody who made these are pretty intense claims that he's making. And I am not here to say he is telling the lies, or he could be sued for that, right? I'm here to saying that claims made without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. It's the Hitchens razor. So it's not that like what he's writing up seems like, I don't believe that. I'm highly intrigued by it, and I really respect his hustle and his courage. But the fair thing for me to do would be to wait for pieces of evidence to corroborate the claims. Okay, so with that out of the way, let me say the following. Number one, I'm sorry about the internet connection. I'll make sure I have the hard line plugged in every time from now on. Let me know what you thought of the standing. I think the standing's a little bit better than normal. Shoot me an email, lukethomasnews@gmail.com. There is, in fact, an MMA beat tomorrow. I will be on it. And, yeah, and then it's 223 next week, y'all. Fight week starts Wednesday. I will be there. So I am very much looking forward to it. Thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, it's Cynthia Calvillo. Stay frosty.